everybody. Welcome to the TechRaptor podcast. I'm Robert Scarpanito, your features editor.
Andrew Otten, editor-in-chief.
Religion Doggett, site founder.
Andrew Stretch, space religion editor.
Oh no.
You're a Scientologist now?
No, the different space religion, the good one.
Have you heard the good space word? Yeah, we're going to talk about Halo Infinite later today. I hope that's clear. But before we do, let's talk about some news. BioShock 4 might be a thing, perhaps. There are rumors that are suggesting that BioShock 4 will take place in Antarctica and that the name of the game will be BioShock Isolation. Thoughts?
I'm here for it.
Okay, we got both sides of the spectrum.
Insight.
Yeah. Because I mean, this isn't going to be Ken Levine, right? Because he is not working on BioShock anymore. He's working on his own thing that we don't know about. So this
Called Psyobok. Weird.
Shiobok.
That's right.
Yeah, where you use the powers in your right hand and the guns in your left hand.
Yep.
Man, that would mess me up. I think legitimately a game that if I picked up the controller and I had to fire everything with my left index finger, that might actually ruin a game for me. I would look to remap those controls.
Yeah, Stretch, I get it. You hate left-handed people. Get
Wow.
it. That's fine.
I mean, it is sinister, right? And that whole left hand.
Something Latin origins,
Exactly.
something.
You guys, left-handed people are evil.
Wow, I feel hated right now.
Well, you've seen, Simpsons with Flanders, the left-hand story. You tell me that Ned's not evil.
No, he's pure.
That's where they trick you.
I'm looking forward to a new adventure in the BioShock universe. I know that Infinite got a whole lot of flack for its 3 Deep 5 Me ending, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. That kind of going through the game somewhat linearly to get it like all expanded out and into some great cosmic, there is always a man, there is always a lighthouse, parallels to the story. I guess that also makes me less fearful about Ken Levine not being part of the project, because they have such a solid blueprint that, create a story and have it tie back into these different, worlds that are all built on, what if we took this concept or this ideal but pushed it up to 100 to the point that, it's a bit crazy, gets into lunacy and almost parody of itself.
Yeah.
I'd love to see it.
This one's about climate change.
That's why we're going to Antarctica, but it's actually a desert.
Well, it already is a desert.
Yeah, technically it is a desert.
It's true.
Yeah.
You're right. It's a nice
It's a very
desert.
cold desert.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think with BioShock, right, the magic of that series is the story of the first one. I think that's the thing that brought most people into really liking what BioShock is, right? The sequels after that are kind of hit and miss depending on where you land with it all, right, and how the story hits you. But I think the further that series goes, the better the gameplay gets. So with this game, even if Ken Levine isn't going to be attached to, blow our minds with lighthouses and shit, I have kind of high hopes for the gameplay. I hope it just feel like, because I mean, there's just something viscerally satisfying about shocking someone and then whacking them with a crowbar, right? Like, just feels good.
Yeah, BioShock always had like a good heft to its melee. Like, it wasn't just like a bit of an and then you like move through the enemies, but like it was like a solid hit.
Oh yeah.
You felt the weight of those attacks.
For sure.
So violent.
Do you not like
that.
Do you not like the violence?
It's just, I hear games are all about it. It's just, you guys are just sitting around talking about violence.
They encourage me to go out and murder, according to the news media.
Yeah, thank you, Fox.
Violence and animal nudists.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that follow-up report talked about kind of like an open world and a faction system in 4, which would be a very big difference from the first few.
Yeah,
Oh, that was a big sigh.
well, it's really these very narrative focused games that if you want to go into open world, it's always like open world comes with big trade offs, particularly when it comes to narrative, and everybody screws it up. Like they're always. It's almost never worth it sometimes. It's because part of the open world is there's a bit of a grind to it a lot of times, where you're getting through or going to something or whatever, and
it's checklisty.
It always screws with the story. You're like, oh yeah, that last story beat I did was like 2 hours ago. What was happening again? And then also get back into it.
That inherent difficulty of, well, if my player can now go to one of 8 different locations, you know, what story can I, like, if I am trying to delve out story, then how can I guarantee that, you know, we won't just start talking about this thing in one bit of story as if it's matter of fact, and then introduce that story element in a different open world location. It's just like inherently makes
you get
it difficult.
those weird contrived stories like, go collect these 6 things that are around the city, and it's okay.
I think you're both just underestimating the 6D chess that they're going to be playing in BioShock Isolation. Truly mind-blowing.
Is Nomura making it, or Kojima?
Yeah, they're bringing them in.
Is this secretly Death Stranding 2?
You play as Norman Reedus.
Oh, God, yes. I'm in.
It's actually going to be called BioShock 4 Monster Energy.
That's right. Because isn't that you're drinking those like powers, but instead you're drinking various Monster Energy flavors?
Oh yeah, like you drink Monster Java, and that's what gives you like
speed boost,
super speed.
Boost. Yeah. Well, all of them will give you a speed boost, right? I guess.
If you drink 300 of them, time stops, like in Futurama.
Well, now that we've got the Monster Energy sponsored segment out of the way,
onto the pickles.
Hopefully they're happier than Vlasic is with this.
I'm so glad you said it, because my brain was like, okay, was it Clausen or Vlasic?
Stork, man.
These cannot be the weekly discussions that we have. Please no.
Pickles? Fine.
TechRaptor's primary color is green.
That's right.
Pickles are green.
I'll bring us back to Warcraft 3 porn. Fine.
So we've now hit on Pickles, Nomura, Warcraft 3 porn. Are there any other staples of the TechRaptor podcast that we're missing at this point?
I mean, we're also not talking about content, so just we're nailing that as well.
Well, that's what we do.
It's a balanced diet here.
Yes. In other news, Joseph Fares, the man behind Hazelight Studio, the fuck the Oscars guy, with Game Awards coming so soon, right? It's nice to remember that moment. His studio has been hit with a copyright claim because their video game It Takes Two, which came out this year, apparently sounds very close to a major video game publisher, Take-Two.
This is an important thing to bring up, because Andrew, I've been meaning to have this conversation with you we can't have 2 Andrews at TechRaptor, so I've legally copyrighted my first name, and you're going to have to change your name legally.
I think the courts will recognize that we are 2 so vastly different that it doesn't matter.
Nope.
Yeah, plus I think it takes 2 Andrews to really keep this place running, you know?
Man.
We're going to call you Drew. Done.
Who, me?
Which one? Which one? Yeah.
No, I was here first.
Stretch and Drew.
No.
Well, we call Stretch though, so like...
Yeah. But I mean, if your last name is Stretch, you're going to be called Stretch.
Yeah,
that just comes with the name.
Yeah.
I think that this is just poor sportsmanship from Take-Two. This is like very
shocking.
Very little dick energy needs to
Damn.
push it around, because I mean there's been so many stories that they've also been doing this with, you know, Rockstar and things related to GTA, that there's an axe throwing company in Orlando that got served a copyright strike because they used the word Rockstar in their title. And it's like, if you're going to stop people from using a word that has been around for a lot longer than you as a company, and a word that will probably continue to be representative of rock stars going forward, to look at a tiny, I believe independently owned business and be like, no, screw you, I'm going to take this name. That's just so petty. No one in their right mind is going to mix up, like, your reputation is not going to get damaged by, if anything, people potentially mistaking It Takes Two as being a game related to Takes Two, the company, probably be a positive for their current reputation.
Yeah, kind of. And I don't want to speak ill of our sponsors, but lest we remember that Monster Energy are the reason that Ubisoft had to rename one of their games.
It's
right?
true.
Remember? Yeah, Phoenix Immortal. Rising Immortal. Phoenix Immortal Rising?
Phoenix Immortals Rising.
Yeah, very memorable name.
Immortals Breath of the Wild Rising.
Yeah, no, it is Immortals Phoenix Rising. Yeah. That
You
used to be
joke,
God's.
but it was a fun game.
Well,
It had heart.
I mean,
well, so it used to be called Gods and Monsters.
that's a much
And
better
then Monster.
name.
Yeah, and then Monster Energy was like, yeah, but that's our name. I guess.
That's ridiculous. A monster with just a generic word.
Right.
Yeah.
See,
Yeah.
I thought that, and I'm not a trademark lawyer, but
You don't
I
say.
feel like, at least from what I understand of trademark law, you have to go after things that potentially damage your IP, and none of that applies.
I mean,
Like,
they're a big
Gods
gaming
and Monsters,
brand now.
it's not like Phoenix Monster Energy Drink. Like, at that point, okay. Same thing with Take Two. Like, It Takes Two is literally a phrase.
I wonder if, because Monster also has, don't they have like the Monster Energy motocross series of games?
Supercross, yeah.
They're in one of the biggest games of all time too.
Well, they used to be, not anymore.
What?
Yeah, in the definitive
What?
edition,
Wait,
they Monster Energy drink cans got replaced with a generic brand.
What? How can that be the definitive edition then?
It's true.
Kojima
It's the
had a
only
really
downgrade.
bad one and just decided
what
this
does-
can't be in my game
What
anymore.
does he even call it? Because it even says in the thing that your Monster like canteen's not full or whatever and stuff. This is an outrage.
So,
Forget
I
this.
did
It
double
Takes Two
check.
news. This is news to me.
I did double check, and yeah, in 2018 there was a Monster Energy Supercross, the official video game, based on the Supercross events that Monster holds in the real world. So I think,
And
arguably,
I wonder
the
if
fact
that's
that
why.
yeah, the fact that like Monster as a brand is used in the title of a video game maybe is what allows them to push it more for of Gods and Monsters.
I guess, but man, that's still like so
That still
small.
doesn't apply to It Takes Two and becoming Take Two.
Yeah. And I mean, it is a shame that that's happening for It Takes Two, because I know that's been nominated for a few awards, right? It's gotten a lot of buzz over the year. So, I mean, it's going to be real rough, like, if they have to change the name, right, in a year or something. Like, the game formerly known as It Takes Two, right?
Yeah.
What if they just change it to something like It Gives Three? Just small enough to be a middle finger.
Yeah.
Or they just change
The
it to
game formerly known
It
as
Has Taken Two.
It took Dose.
Yeah. Yeah, just make it in different language. Boom. Done.
There it is. Our final news story for the week.
it's Game Pass.
We're going to
Kind
talk
of.
about Game Pass, brought to you by Sony.
Yeah, Game Pass,
Maybe.
but on the better console. A
Interesting.
PC.
Will
Game
this
Pass is
get
already
me to
on
buy a
PC.
PS5?
Yeah, according to reporting in Bloomberg, Sony is working on a Game Pass competitor, but it's not quite like Xbox Game Pass. So, this is all kind of behind the scenes reporting, so things could change if and when it's officially announced. But this whole project is being codenamed Spartacus, and there are 3 tiers to it. The first tier is basically what PlayStation Plus is right now, where you get a couple free games, quote unquote free games, every month. You can play online with your friends. Tier 2 adds a catalog of PS4 games that will also include some PS5 games down the line. And then tier 3 adds extended demos. So I don't know, you could probably play a demo of certain exclusives early or something like that. Game streaming and a library of classic games from PS1, 2, 3, and the PSP. No PS Vita, still shafted.
Yeah, I'd be curious of the pricing. I feel like that's going to be a big factor in whether or not this service is worth it. If tier 3 is more than $15 a month, at least to me, like, Xbox Game Pass, for $15 a month, it's either on my Xbox or it's on my PC, and I have tons of options. It being cross-platform too is a huge bonus for that $15 a month.
Well, and it's new games. Like, you're getting the stuff that just comes out a lot. Like, you got it on release day or whatever. Not just first-party Xbox games. There's other big third-party games you get too. So it's like, PlayStation, I think, is they do have a good catalog of games. I hope they're not taking the very hubris-filled, approach like Nintendo. We're like, here's one fucking Nintendo 64 game. That's all we're gonna do, one at a time. Because Paper Mario just is coming to that now. It's like, that's how good our shit is. You're getting one. We're trickling one a month to you. It's like, geez.
I kind of worry that's the direction it's going. I don't know. I don't get good vibes from Sony.
Well, Sony definitely thinks that they're way more prestige than anything Xbox has, for sure. Like, that's how they see themselves. So I think that's how they're going to try to market this in some way. And it's just not going to be as desirable for people, I don't think, if that's... Especially, like, one of the big coolest things about Xbox is that you do get the first-party things day one. Like, you don't have to buy it. You just get it. And I can't see Sony being like, yeah, here's the next Last of Us, you just have it now for free, or God of War Ragnarok, it's now yours to play. I just don't see it.
Well, my question too, does this replace PlayStation Plus, or is that going to be a whole separate thing? Because if they're like,
I think that's meant to be like the lowest tier.
Yeah, tier 1 is basically going to be PS Plus.
Okay, kind of the same way that you can have Xbox Gold now, then you can, for a bit more, get regular Game Pass, and then if you get Game Pass Ultimate, it bundles it together.
Okay. Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense.
And tier 2 is basically like getting PS Plus and PS Now, right? Which currently, if I remember right, so PS Plus is like $60 a year, and then PS Now, I think that's a $10 a month sub.
I don't know. I honestly forget that exists all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah, and like I've looked through the catalog every now and then, and I'm like, oh, I could see myself playing that on it, but then I look at Game Pass, which I already have, and I'm like, I don't need both now.
Exactly.
Really.
There's no real choice. There's one choice to make.
This Project Spartacus seems to be targeting what Game Pass was originally, which is Game Pass originally was still fantastic. I think depending on their library, it's going to be really good, because I know that there's a lot of I was a PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 person, and then I swapped to a 360. I have a whole lot of games that I absolutely love from those original PlayStations that I would love to have a chance to play. And I would probably approach the system like a lot of people do with Game Pass as well, that like I'd get it for a month, like a slow month. Like this upcoming January, we have not too much happening except for like Pokemon at the end of the month. That would totally be a month that I would get this service and would just like nostalgia-filled play through like a whole bunch of old PS1, PS2 games because I could.
Mm-hmm. Well,
if the library's big, I'm sold. Like I would happily go back and play a boatload of PS1 games, because without the console at least having it, sometimes it's tough to find some of the more obscure titles.
But we've also seen how Sony will very much only take half steps towards that backwards compatibility. Yep. Already talks about like whether this will be native PS1, PS2, PS3 games, or whether it will only be streaming. What kind of emulation or upscaling is there going to be? Xbox dedicated a whole team to backwards compatibility. that did a fantastic job.
Right. I think
but
that's where the most... Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say past, steps into backwards compatibility was no backwards compatibility and saying that, I don't believe that people would care about playing these old games. There was the brief amount of time that they were releasing PS2 games for PlayStation 4. I know that Rut was excited because Dark Cloud was on there. I bought Ape Escape 2 on there because that was, a game that I loved. But they got to adding, I think under 60 games over the course of 2 months. And then we just never heard anything more about these PS2 games. So I'd just be hesitant, if it's all as much effort goes into it as with Game Pass, it's going to be a fantastic service, and I would definitely look forward to it. But if they're going to take the same kind of quarter step, dipping a toe into the pool and then running away from it, then it might just be another dead in the water service.
Well, I think that's where the biggest hurdle is, right? Is that the backwards compatibility, because it's not just PS1 and PS2, but PS3 I think is the really big thing, because the PS3 did that weird fucking cell architecture thing,
yeah.
Right? So like even to this day, it's kind of difficult to emulate PS3 games. I think it's only been in the past few months that you can now emulate every game in the library, and even then not all of them run very well because cell is just so hard to figure out.
I think as well, though, a lot of the PS3 games that honestly people are going to be super interested in playing have already gotten PS4 ports.
Yeah.
They did a really good job.
Though. Not really, though. Metal Gear Solid 4.
Metal Gear Solid
Trilogy.
Yeah.
I mean, not the greatest thing, right? It's not the Halo killer, but was...
I'm not doubting that there will be things that will get left behind because of the PS3 and its weird architecture choices, which, allowed it to be more powerful, but just was a pain to program on, and to move stuff forward. But a lot of the big stuff is off onto PS4.
All right, that's the thing I think I'm most interested in seeing with it is how far will they go with the PS3? Because I think even today it's easy to see that building the PS3 on such a weird architecture has only made things harder for Sony in the long run when it comes to this backwards compatibility nostalgia that's fueling most of the industry, right? So if that tier 3 pass can get you a reliable library of PS3 games, I'm interested, but it can't be more than $15. Just straight up. I know PlayStation wants to be prestige, they want to be the Apple of the gaming space. It cannot be more than $15. Otherwise, Game Pass just has such a good rep, right? You can't really beat it.
Honestly, even if it has all that and it's still $15, it's still not comparable to Game Pass. Not as good at all.
Day one updates are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Xbox went all in, and that's why it's successful. They didn't take a half measure. They weren't maybe we can save money if we don't do this. No, they were just YOLO, put it all out there. And it just worked out well.
Well, I think part of it, though, is that PlayStation knows they hold all the chips here, right? Because even if this Game Pass thing wasn't a thing, they know they're going to make their money back on Horizon Forbidden West. They know they're going to sell a ton of copies of God of War Ragnarok, right? They don't need, for lack of a better word, a gimmick to get people to play their exclusives. Whereas with Xbox, there was a pretty long dry spell, right? Until Halo was probably the one that people most reliably were looking forward to. But Forza Horizon 5, obviously hugely successful right now. But I think it's because it's built on the back of how many people have invested in Game Pass, how many people have played all of these exclusives on day one because of Game Pass, and now are oh, hey, Xbox has some stuff I'd actually like to buy.
And so many day one indies as well trickle through that they may not be the thing that at the end of the year you're oh my god, yeah, that was the most incredible thing. But just the chance to day one install and play Echo Generation earlier this year. I had an absolute blast playing. I was lucky enough to review it. The publishers sent us a code, but if I had not been reviewing it, I would have still sat down and played it on day one with Game Pass. That not having those new games that will be the thing that incur people to go yeah, I'll buy a year of this. versus the I'll play a month, blast through some games, and I'll let that lapse until I need it again.
But I kind of get what Scrappy was getting at. Like PlayStation hasn't needed to think that way either, because they've blown Microsoft out of the water, Xbox out of the water when it comes to console sales the past 2 generations. I mean, 360 was dominating forever, but in the end, PS3 won out sales wise, and PS4 absolutely crushed the Xbox One. And this gen is so scarcity and all that. Who can say? But
well, now I mean, we know this generation that PlayStation 5 is outselling Series X.
Yeah.
But then also every week we read stories about how it's still impossible to get either consoles.
Yep. So that's what it's hard to say. Like, can you fairly say which one's doing better or who manufactured the best is basically right now.
Yeah.
I think Games Pass allows Xbox to win right now because of the fact that it can be that kind of cross-platform PC or Xbox. They're able to get people in an ecosystem that PlayStation can't right now.
They just dropped the cloud gaming for Series X games as well. Yep. So anyone with a day one Xbox One, if you have a good internet connection, next week you can play the Series X version of Halo and get all the benefits of the increased loading time and stuff.
Yeah. And
that's also ludicrous to think about.
Yeah.
To make the entire last generation and make that forward compatible.
Microsoft did a huge 180 with jumping from Xbox One to Xbox Series X, in terms of their mindset as a company towards gaming. In the past, I think the Xbox was always kind of that afterthought, and now Xbox has kind of realized hey, this is actually something really big for us as a company. And so they're buying first party studios, they're investing in insane architecture and all this stuff, and it's paying off for them. I think if Sony could do the same and could get that same mindset,
Sony has a very similar
competitive space.
Sony has a very similar approach to what they do that Nintendo does, and I don't know why. Nintendo is just like this golden child that gets away with it every single time.
Well, yeah, because they have Chris Pratt. Oh, sorry,
yeah,
Mario.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. They just announced that for their Nintendo Online, December 10th, Paper Mario 64 will be added. That's it. Just the one extra Nintendo 64 game.
That was the big enough splash of news that they're like, this is good enough.
Well, I mean, let's be fair, right? That's the last N64 game people really want. That's the one everyone was looking forward
That's
to,
right?
There's no other N64 game that anyone's waiting on for Nintendo Switch Online.
Yeah, definitely none. That entire library.
No.
Port Hey You Pikachu, you cowards.
That's right. Everybody's got a microphone now. Come on.
Yeah, well, the Switch does.
That's true.
You have to connect an app to your phone.
What if they release a special, just like they did a special N64, Hey You Pikachu, they release a special Switch?
Clip a giant bubble microphone to the top.
It's got
has to plug into the
on it.
USB-C.
Give me that.
Man. Yeah, I don't know. I think at the end of the day, I think PlayStation's now responding to pressure, right? Because I think they're recognizing, oh, hey, Game Pass is what's making Xbox succeed. We need Spartacus. We need to do something about it, right? But I just know for a fact, whenever we see the eventual Elder Scrolls 6 trailer, the last frame of it's going to be available day one on Game Pass, right? Mm-hmm. When we see the next Horizon
Starfield as well.
Yeah, but when we see the next God of War Ragnarok trailer, they're not going to mention shit about Spartacus. It's just going to be here's the release date. Give us $70 or you can't play it.
Yeah.
They're probably not even going to mention that you can get the games on PS4.
Well,
let's be honest.
Kind of what I was getting at a little bit earlier. They haven't needed to. They still sell an insane amount and sell really well. So it's also so what exactly are they trying to weasel in? Are they really trying to be a direct competitor to Xbox, or are they just also trying to get a subscription service for people to pay for? Is it really supposed to be a one-to-one comparison, or is it just a different thing that they want people to pay money for?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Game Pass is...
Who knows until they say more officially, but...
Game Pass's end goal is to end up like Netflix on my bank statement. Just a subscription that I let run that I forget about. I will go months without accessing Netflix, but they want to be they want you to buy them and then forget them.
Exactly.
Yeah, but then remember them when the big thing comes out.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't know if like, and like I'm trying to think in terms of, because I think most of us on staff here are lucky where we have pretty decent access to probably these devices, right? But there are some people out there who might only have a PS5, right? Or maybe even might only have a PS4, and maybe this game streaming thing to stream, you know, Horizon 2 on their PS4 is like a really nice and enticing idea, right? But I just think at the end of the day, it's like, I don't think it's going to compete. I mean, it'll be in the same conversation, but it's always going to not live up.
Yeah, I think Xbox has just set the gold standard, and it's going to be hard for another company to meet that standard without just going hard. And you kind of have to at this point. It's so well established that if you fall short of what Games Pass offers, you're already behind.
Yeah. And Xbox also partnering up with EA for the EA Play, and just like no additional cost integrating that. Like the Mass Effect Remastered trilogy is hitting, I think, next month or the month after, and it's just like, okay, you're like, I didn't even particularly want this subscription, but I have it now, so I might as well use it.
It's just part of it now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the PlayStation Game Pass. We'll maybe see some official announcements of it soon. We'll have to find out, right? But let's talk about the golden child of Xbox Game Pass coming out soon. Halo Infinite, the good space word. I hear some people here have been playing it.
I hear Chris Pratt's going to voice Master Chief in the movie, in this TV show.
Yeah.
So I was lucky enough to be given a code by Microsoft for Halo Infinite as well. And so I've been digging into that. My review should be up on the site by the time people listening to this. And they did a really good job to take what was a bit of a train wreck of a story from Guardians and reshape it. You know, there's definitely some stuff that they kept in the story, and there's some stuff that they just didn't bring up or just kind of shooed to the side, like, yeah, don't worry about that. Like, we've got something more coherent happening over here. You know, don't pay attention to the giant space owl behind the curtain.
Is this a Destiny reference, or?
No, that's remember I told you about the giant space owls that Cortana got?
Right.
I did have to spend like 20-30 minutes researching before I went into Infinite on what's been happening with the books, what happened with Halo Wars 2, the RTS game, because I just don't have the strategic mind for those, and then recapped Halo 5 for myself as well. But it does a really good job. It feels like this is half the beginning or half the ending of the last trilogy, while also very heavily stepping into the start of a new trilogy with the introduction of the Banished as the main antagonistic force for the mainline game. That seems to be the plan going forward. But it's just an absolute blast. You know, it feels great. It runs great. I was playing it on Series X all week. And the open world stuff is so cool. There were so many times I was walking around the open world, like, you know, grappling between trees and stuff to move faster across the terrain, that I'd then like hear a grunt scream or something, and I'd kind of like be snapped back to like, I'm playing Halo right now. Like, this is weird.
Oh, wait,
this is weird that I'm in an open world area.
So you can grapple hook to trees and pull yourself up into the sky.
Yeah.
Then can you deploy parachute?
There's no parachute.
Is there fall damage in the campaign?
No.
Do you get points? Do you get points for causing mayhem?
Or
no
chaos.
Points for
Some
mayhem.
might call it chaos.
I wanted to use a different word, but if we want to use that word,
they've done a really good job balancing how large the world is. It's not the biggest map. We're not going to see it compared to Skyrim or anything. They've done a really good job balancing out the map and how much there is to do in it, that it never feels like you get to a new area and it's just like, holy shit, like 80 different things just popped up on my map. At any point when you capture like a forward operating base, a FOB, you'll only ever have like 5 or 6 things added to your map. Those are kind of the Ubisoft towers of Halo Infinite.
Can I ask, does it ever feel checklisty to you where you're like, oh man, I gotta do all of this, or like you're in it?
No, they do a good job. Like, they do a really good job indicating on the map, like, here is your primary objective. If you want to just run through the primary objective, there's still like over 12 very Halo levels. Like, you might go down into the surface, and you have just like a proper linear ass Halo level. But then when you're up on the ground, you can go to one of the banished outposts, and it might be that this outpost is the one supplying all the weaponry to the ring. So, you know, your objective there is to destroy their 3 different ammo caches and then make your way under the base and destroy what's making the weapons. And each location you go to, there is like a checklist of collectibles. They do lay it out really nicely for what each area has. And the audio logs are fun. There's definitely a lot more collectibles in this one than there has been in previous Halo games. But I wouldn't say at any point it like really feels checklisty. Probably because it's such a small checklist, if any. And so much can just be avoided or ignored if you don't want to. And you can just play those 12 Halo levels in a row.
So then it feels more like classic campaign.
Yeah.
So a lot of the like early previews people were saying Breath of the Wild vibes. Is that in terms of the open world? I
don't think I would say Breath of the Wild. I'm not quite sure what I would compare it to. Probably actually the closest comparison that I was like really feeling while playing was 2018's God of War. How that kind of has that open world, but then it like at certain points it very much breaks down into a singular path.
Okay. I was wondering about that because it feels like, just as a little aside, like it feels like these Breath of the Wild comparisons are becoming like the Dark Souls comparisons. It's like, all right, everything's Dark Souls, and now everything that's open world is Breath of the Wild now. And it's like, all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's got an open world, but I mean, it's definitely still very linear.
Okay.
What I kind of dig is that kind of where you end up in the map is also somewhat non-linear. Like, you might start in the northeast, but then you take a pelican down to the southeast and then make your way north, and then you're somewhere else and somewhere else. It's not like when you look at like the open world map of like Assassin's Creed, and you understand exactly where the story is going to take you just because you start over here and then, you know, you'll probably end up all the way down here and just like make your way through the map.
Right. So you said earlier that you refreshed yourself with like a ton of Halo lore and books and all that. Do you think someone like me, who doesn't know that much about Halo, except for that there is a Master Chief and a Cortana, could I jump into Halo Infinite and get it?
I think there would be a bunch of stuff that they just kind of say that you would need to take at face value and just be like, oh, okay. Like, I know in the cutscenes, in the trailers, we've seen like the point where Master Chief meets up with the weapon, the new AI that he has for this campaign.
Cortana too.
Yep.
Yeah. Cortuna. Where she just kind of says, oh, I was sent here 6 months ago to mimic the installation and trap Cortana. And you just got to go like, okay, sure. Like, I'm not sure anything of like what that was like or how Chief really got here, you know, if I don't know that stuff, but, you know, you've just got to be like, yeah, Chief is it, another Halo, and the Banished show up, and they're after something in the Zeta Halo, and they've paired up with this other being, weird alien thing called the Harbinger. You know, at its very like top surface level, it's a repeat of that same story of Master Chief shows up in a Halo ring and kills hundreds of thousands of aliens as he tries to stop them doing whatever they're up to. Definitely some of the finer points, like you'll get a lot of just names and terminology thrown at you that you'll just be like, okay, sure. Like, and even I got mixed up with some of the generals and lieutenants of the Banished army, because a whole lot of them have very non-normal English names, and they all don't particularly look too different from one another.
Right. But those are all introduced in Infinite, right? It's not like, there was or
yes and no. There's the Banished as an enemy were introduced in Halo Wars 2. This is the first time that Master Chief has come up against them, and kind of like the importance and the history of the Banished isn't really talked about. But you just know that they're like a splinter group that didn't like the religious nature of the Covenant, so they became their own group that just fights for themselves.
Gotcha.
They're kind of, because this is going to add confusion because Spartans are a thing. They're kind of like a Spartan nation within the Covenant. Like, honor in battle, go out, kill stuff, or
glory and violence, etc.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely excited to play that because I think, even though I don't have much of a history with Halo, like there's just a lot about Halo Infinite, the way it's looking, that's like clicking with me in terms of the campaign stuff. So
it definitely kind of hurt. I think it will hurt it a bit at launch that it doesn't have that campaign co-op that's gotten pushed out like 6 months and stuff. There's definitely times that you're standing at like the forward operating base and there's 4 different places for you to access ammo from, or like access like picking what weapons you want. It's just like, this is meant to be so that 4 players at once can all access. But that might also just mean that, maybe 6 months that campaign gets a bit of like breath of fresh air as co-op gets added.
So if he
breath
knows
of the wild fresh air.
If he knows nothing or very little about Halo, what if all some knowledge of Halo is RB and the Chief? How much?
Then you will be in a similar standing to Rob.
RB's in it, right?
If Halo 1 and Halo 2 were all like a single book, like you'd have like the Lord of the Rings, like a single book, beginning, middle, end, beginning, middle, end. Halo 4 and 5 and what I assumed was going to be 6 is kind of like one story told out in 3 games, kind of how they split The Hobbit out into 3 movies. But after now playing Halo Infinite, it's really, it's the last half of this 4, 5, 6 trilogy and so much setting up for what will be the future of Halo, which I think is grounding itself more, and it should be a future that people are looking forward to.
Hell yeah. And people have been playing the multiplayer in the past few months too, or not months, weeks too.
To the point that as we're speaking about this, our Halo subreddit is currently locked down due to negativity about not even the gameplay.
Is it the Battle Pass, right?
Battle Pass playlists, and probably
playlists.
Melee.
Yeah. Rhett, how are you enjoying? Like, how's your rank going?
Still Diamond. Cool. Diamond 1.5, I guess. I play pretty much every night for the most part, but I think the only things at this point that frustrate me, like the Battle Pass is the Battle Pass. Like, you can't be worse than Apex Legends Season 1's Battle Pass. The challenges frustrate me a bit. Some of them I'm just like, how the hell am I going to accomplish this? Because, like one of them was super situational, like get a Guardian Angel medal from halfway across the map or from a long distance, and so you have to be lucky enough to get like a sniper and shoot somebody while they're shooting your teammate from a far distance. And then melee the ability, I understand phasing through teammates for movement just from a fundamental level, but phasing through enemies is causing far more issues than it probably could have solved. Like me meleeing through someone instead of actually hitting them is incredibly frustrating. And it's not hurting me too much. I think I've adapted to it for the most part, but it doesn't feel like it has in previous Halos. And I think they've at least acknowledged most of those types of issues. So
that's good. So you're having fun with it still?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's good fun. Like if you can suspend yourself from being pissy about the the playlists and just kind of enjoy it for what it is, it's peak Halo for sure. Like, again, like last week I was watching hours of jumping videos because people are just uncovering more like insanely cool jumps that you can do across the map. Like, it's like the super jumps of Halo 2 that people figured out. Like, it's been really awesome watching the community uncover that kind of stuff.
It's going to be amazing to see that kind of stuff once, like, you know, because you just have like the grapple shot whenever. You can use it to like literally just scale cliffs vertically because it recharges faster than you drop. I'm so looking forward to all the kinds of like, you know, this like back in Halo 1, you'd get like the Warthog jump trick compilations on Blood Gulch and stuff. I'm expecting to see a lot of really, really cool cutscenes and clip compilations and stuff of people just breaking this game.
Yes, I'm here for it. The Halo community has always been great for compilations and mashups.
Would you say the Halo community is better than the Elex II community?
Wow. Okay.
Well, when it's a community of 2 people.
Yes.
Right. That's true.
It's literally just me and Don. Yeah. I mean, I guess decent segue. So I can't talk about it yet as of this publish, but
no.
I am dropping my Elex 2 preview at 11 o'clock today of when we publish this.
So be mashing F5 to get that sweet early news, early look at what Elex 2 is going to be.
Yeah.
Or not.
It'll probably continue to be just me and Don loving it. So, Andrew can
talking
suck
about
an egg.
Dead games and the cells those leave behind.
No, it's one of the threats they use in Elex.
Oh, that's the writing, huh? That's not surprised.
Wow, get fucked.
I can't say anything.
It's true. Otten, what have you been playing?
You know, I'm hip and cool with the kids. So I play new stuff only, exclusively.
Like Among Us, Fortnite.
Yeah, Among Us and that. What's it? Fortnite.
Fart knife. Yeah.
Jesus.
No, we were getting ready, gearing up to do our end of the year awards, and I was reminded, not that it existed, but just reminded, oh yeah, like Dead Cells has been getting a bunch of like updates and content and DLC and stuff added to it. And I haven't played it probably in a while, not too long since after it launched. And all the stuff they're adding is like really cool. All the new weapons that they're adding, even the new enemies just in like the beginning areas is like, okay, this is not that they were cakewalks before, but I guess part of it is, you know, like you kind of get the rhythm down. It becomes very much like do this, and it feels very, because you're moving really quick. All that's been interrupted on me now because it's like, what the hell's that thing? And I got to deal with that.
All of like the enemy skill and muscle memory that you used to have
it's like,
is
oh
now
shit, what the hell is this thing doing? And then like
complicated.
they've added new different kind of weapons, like these spears and like really long bladed things that like have a lot of reach, that are really cool. So it's one of those, like, if someone's like, yeah, I liked Dead Cells, and just kind of just put it down because, you know, you liked it and moved on. Like, there's a ton of new and cool stuff to check out. And it just, that second DLC for it came out, it was early this year, I think, wasn't it? Or
yeah,
I can't remember.
Like the Bad Seed?
That Bad Seed was the first DLC, paid DLC. The second one, I'm forgetting the name of it now. Anyway, they're real cheap. They're like $5, and they add a bunch of cool stuff. Like,
didn't they just announce some more DLC stuff for that?
Yeah, there's even more stuff coming, I think.
Yeah, there's like the gangs all here, right? Like all those other indie game characters are coming in.
And then they've also got the new Queen and the Sea DLC, which was announced this week.
Yes,
that's coming out in early 2022.
Yeah, there's just so much stuff. It's like it wasn't a small game before necessarily. Like you could get a lot out of it.
It's sink a lot of time.
Yeah, and now there's even more. Like there's just so much more to do and see and experience. It's crazy. So if you're like me that has just not touched it in a while, now's a good time. There's a ton of stuff to do. It's really good.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of Dead Cells ever since I first played it. I think in early access, right? Like there's just something about the way it all clicks together that just feels so good.
Yeah, like once you get like a
well.
run going, or you've got that like a minute long thing where you're just mowing through stuff, making your way through, like that is super satisfying. Or like when you find a weapon that you're like, okay, this is the one. Like this one clicks with me. And you
and then you never find it again.
Yeah, then you're pissed every run that you don't get it.
Yeah. I don't know, just something about how you can be like, you can just be adaptable though, right? And like, even if you don't get your favorite weapon, you can figure something out usually.
You'll find at least something that's like, okay, I like this, whatever this works. It's an excellent game. And it's another one of those, like, just, there's quite a few just little indie, smaller games that just get this continual support forever. It reminds me, like, Hollow Knight got just insane amount of stuff just for a long time. Like, it just kept getting more updates.
Into the Gungeon was one like that for me.
Yeah, it's great. It's pretty good. I like it. It's definitely worth taking another look at if you haven't, or if you liked it in the past and are just looking for something to give to kill some time with. Like, there's a lot of new stuff to jump into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Lord knows there's definitely time in the next few weeks to jump into stuff. Because I spent the past week, I picked up a few indie games that were on Game Pass and played through a few, like Sable and Unpacking. But I finished playing Superliminal, that puzzle, a first-person puzzle game where when you pick up items and then you drop them, they change size depending on like your perception to it, right? Like how big it looks to you. And I remember playing it, I think at like a PAX or E3.
Yeah, we
like,
went to that. We went to the Microsoft campus and played it there. We talked to the dev. Remember?
That's right. Yeah. And now that it's on Game Pass, I was like, it's a good time to check it out. I think it's been on there for a while now, though, right? Like earlier this year, but it's very fun, and it's like you can tell that these devs played Portal and Stanley Parable before, right? Like it's very Stanley Parable Portal vibes. But it is very charming, and some of the puzzles do like kind of break your brain a bit in a good way, like it makes you think about things differently, which I think is what the magic of like Portal and Stanley Parable were, right? Is that they presented a challenge to you that was so unique and different, and Superliminal has that vibe. But it's pretty short, like you can get through it in maybe an afternoon. But what's pretty cool is when you beat it, it unlocks this director commentary mode. So I just went through the entire game again and just like rushed through the puzzles because they have these little buttons you can press where the developers all recorded some voiceover to kind of just give you a peek behind the scenes of like, here's how we created this puzzle, or like here's a problem that we found and we actually like reverse engineered a solution that gave us a new way to do a different puzzle sort of stuff. And it's like, that's pretty cool. It's just seeing the thought process behind it all, Yeah,
it's kind of made, like, just as an aside with it, we don't see more of that kind of commentary, like stuff. I get like it's hard to do it for a game where you're playing for 20 something hours, but like movies will have those commentaries you can watch with the game or watch with the movie. It'd be interesting to hear more of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think this game's like the good size for it, right?
Yeah.
Because like I blasted through the game in like 30 minutes, like at the second time, because I was just interested in the commentary. So it's that kind of game where you can't just rush through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Really enjoy those games that take things that we take for granted, such as gravity and relative size of objects to the observer, and spin them on their head. In a way that like only a video game could. Like there's no way to correctly establish an experience like that through like a novel or through a movie.
I've seen Inception. What are you talking about?
Actually, Inception is probably the closest it really have. But even as far and early back as like the impossible staircase in Mario 64, or I know that the what's that painting horror game? Layers of Fear. Layers of Fear does that as well. Like you walk into a room and then you turn around and the door's just gone.
Yeah.
Just like how much like fun and trickery can be happening behind you when the player isn't looking.
I would not call that fun, but
so
there's a reason I don't play horror games.
With Superliminal, does it just kind of Does it throw in extra weird mechanics, or is it really just like you're dealing with this perspective stuff, and the size of items and moving around a space to change their size and use them? Or
it definitely throws in some weird stuff, like so yeah, the first few puzzles are like, yeah, you can make this pawn, like this chess pawn, bigger or smaller, right, to fit through different spaces. But then they throw things like so they have portals too, like doorways. Like you can't make portals, you don't get a portal gun, but there just are doorways. And then when you're first introduced to them, you're like, oh, okay, they're just set in stone and you can kind of move them around. But then there's a puzzle where like there's a bouncy castle, like it's a big pool, indoor pool, and there's a bouncy castle, but it's really tiny. But then if you make it really, really big, the door on the bouncy castle is a portal that leads you somewhere else. So then there's more in like, because like if you make the door really big and you walk through it, now you're really small on the other side.
Okay.
So how does that?
Oh, that's cool.
Right? Yeah. There's a lot of that sort of thing. Or there's one puzzle where you can't actually pick up something, but when you hit it, you clone it, and the clone appears wherever it should appear based on your perception. So now you don't think of it as an item, but now just purely as perception, right? And you know, there's little tricks like that where you really have to kind of think about things very differently, even after the first few goes.
Good. Hey, that's all. Like, I love when games like just take one concept and just do it really, really well and get just go down that instead of, because there's so many. This is a big thing in the middling tier of like AAA games. They're like, we need all these different mechanics and features when they're all done just okay-ish or not so great. But it's like, we have so many features instead of, all right, here's this one like relatively simple idea, but we're taking it to all these different ways that we can think of, are always really cool.
Yeah, there's just something about the game that reminds me actually a bit of like Antechamber, if any of you have played that before too, where it's like it plays with negative space and it's like just things that don't make sense physically, like in the physical realm that we can understand, and yet it makes all of that puzzle mechanics that you have to figure out, and it's just something that you can't really get anywhere else besides in a video game. So it's just you know, if you have Game Pass, I'd recommend Superliminal if you're in that mood for just a little afternoon of like some kind of brain bending sort of stuff. It's pretty good.
Would you say did you have a lot of difficulty with any of the puzzles? Like, would you say this might be like one to sit down with a friend or significant other and like kind of like puzzle through it?
There was one puzzle in the entire game where I was like, my brain just cannot get this, and I had to look up a guide for it. But the rest of them, you can figure it out. Even if you kind of hit a wall, you just kind of play with it a bit, and then then your brain will click. But yeah, that's Superliminal out on Game Pass. Actually, all the games we talked about today, I think, are on Game Pass, except the preview one.
Dead Cells may have been removed, but
has it?
It was definitely on. I'd have to look up. Dead Cells has definitely been on Game Pass because that's where I played it. But it may be off now. Not 100% sure.
Well, if it is off, I don't know. It's still worth it. I think to pick it up.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
For sure.
That's excellent. I think it won our indie game of the year that year.
Oh yeah, it did. Well, that wraps up this week's episode of the TechRaptor podcast. We hope you enjoyed. If you like what we did here, feel free to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, or if you're watching on YouTube, give us a like, thumbs up, and comment down below. Are you excited to play as the Master Chief? Are you going to be diving into Halo Infinite and using the grapple hook to climb a cliff face straight up? Let us know.
So good.
And if you want more gaming content, news, features, reviews, all of that, you can go to TechRaptor.net, where you can find Rut's preview of Elex II later today. You can find that Halo Infinite review and all sorts of other stuff throughout the week. I checked out a physical brick and mortar Razer store, so that will probably be going up this week if you're interested in hearing more about that. But otherwise, this podcast will be back next week, and we're going to talk about the Game Awards and all that stuff. So we'll see you then.
So much news.